Hi everyone, Ian here, and in part 2 of this Canon C70 series, I'm going to be covering the remaining parts of the internal menu and the settings that I normally use to try and get the best from the camera. The C70 has a lot of menus and a lot of customization. Some areas are more critical than others, so in this video I'll be covering the most important settings you'll need to know. First, navigate to tab 1, Camera Setup. On page 1, Fine Increment allows the lens's iris to transition more smoothly across its f-stop range, and in a more gradual manner. It helps hide the jumps in exposure when using a photography lens, which normally will have a distinct click to it as it changes the exposure. By default, your ND filters are capped up to 6 ND stops. With extended ND range, this allows you to have 10 stops. It does this by stacking the NDs on top of one another. On page 2, the shutter mode can be viewable as angle or speed, of which I've already discussed, and I'd recommend setting this as angle. For ISO and gain, I'd recommend using ISO, as it's a more familiar unit of measurement for people who've used cinema cameras and DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. ISO gain mode should also be set to manual because you want as much manual control over your exposure as possible. On page 3, auto white balance response can remain as normal, and CTEP increment should be set as Kelvin. Page 4 and 5 cover the autofocus capabilities of which I've already discussed. If I was using autofocus, I'd usually be using continuous autofocus and would select a large or small frame depending on what I was capturing. I'd set my autofocus frame position as selectable, and my autofocus response would all be dependent on how quickly I'd want the autofocus to switch between subjects. If you need to track faces, ensure the face detect and tracking is turned on, and the type of face autofocus that is most appropriate for your needs. I'd also recommend setting quick function button number 7 to tracking for object tracking. On page 6, you're able to perform an auto black balance. Auto black balance calibrates the black balance to ensure the sensor can determine true black. This helps reduce digital grain and reduces hot pixels occurring on the sensor. A black balance should be performed at the following times: if the camera has been in a prolonged state of storage, frequent shutter and ISO changes across a shoot day, a significant change in ambient temperature, or increased grain appearing when the camera is set to the native ISO when filming in well-lit environments. Attach a body cap to the camera or lens and follow the instructions to correctly perform the auto black balance. Ensure EFS lens is off. We're using EF lenses, as EFS lenses are designed for smaller sensors and we don't use any of these. Page 7 provides our digital stabilization. Digital IS stabilizes all lenses, including those which do not have built-in stabilization, such as the Samyang and Canon Cine Primes. Lenses which do have IS, however, work in unison with the camera and provide electronic IS from the sensor and optical IS from the lens. Digital IS will crop into the image slightly to provide this stabilization. This can be useful in handheld run and gun situations such as documentary. However, turn this off when shooting on tripods or gimbals. Tab 2 is used for picture profile adjustment. These same adjustments can be made from the quick recording window via the live page. 1 to 6 comprise of Canon Standard 709, Canon YDR, Canon Log and HLG PQ profiles. I recommend shooting in the Canon YDR or Canon Log 3 when additional dynamic range is needed. Tab 3 provides your recording and media setup. This window has many of the settings which are available via the quick function tools on the live viewing page. Initialize media allows you to format the media cards. Sensor mode lets you choose between Super 35, so the true sensor size, and Super 16, which is the cropped sensor on the C70. System frequency should be set to 50 for UK PAL territories. and if you wish to shoot in 24p, this needs to be set as 24 Hz. As previously discussed, for main record format, I recommend XF AVC 422 10-bit. Your main resolution will be individual preference. I'd pick 3840 by 2160 in long op, even if mastering in 1080p, as this gives me a sharper, cleaner image with finer grain, and I can crop in more easily when needed. For frame rate, 25p or 50p are available when shooting in long op formats. If you want to shoot in 24, then again that frequency must be set to 24 Hz. The main audio format will only become available when shooting in MP4 codecs. You can capture 2 channels of audio in ACC 16-bit or 4 channels in LPCM 16-bit. Across page 2, we can adjust our recording mode, of which we can choose between normal recording, slow and fast, slow motion with sound, and pre-recording. Pre-recording caches 3 seconds of footage prior to when the record button is pressed. These recording modes can also be adjusted from the film strip icon in the top left-hand corner of the live view screen. With slow and fast motion selected, the slow motion image is captured and transcoded in camera, i.e. the slow motion is baked into the image, and no audio is captured. SNF clip audio WAV performs the same action, i.e. it slows the image down in camera, however audio is still captured at the standard frame rate which you've set in the normal recording window, so either 24, 25 or 50 frames per second. But do note, to capture audio in this slow motion setting, you'll need both SD cards available in the camera. This is because one card will capture the image and the second card will capture a separate WAV audio file. The frame rates you can record at will all be dependent on the resolution and codec you selected. Across page 3, you can select how you wish the second card to function, i.e. relay recording or an A main and B sub for your cards. And page 4 allows you to turn on record command and timecode functions for external monitors, and this allows you to establish metadata information. Tab 4 is all about audio. The Canon C70 has 4 microphone channels. Channel 1 and 2 are mapped together, as are channel 3 and 4. Within these channels, you can select input terminals, which are for XLR and external microphones, mic for 3.5mm jack microphones like a Rode video mic, and the built-in mic. Physical audio dials and quick function buttons are available on the back of the C70. And if you're using external microphones like the Sennheiser 416, ensure that the camera is set to mic plus 48 volts and manual audio adjustment is selected from this back panel. You can select which microphone inputs are selected by pressing the audio status button. By default, when channel 1/channel 2 is set to input terminals, input 1 will be recorded onto channel 1 and input 2 will be recorded onto channel 2. Channel 3 and 4 will normally be set to the built-in microphones for scratch audio. This means if you have 2 external microphones connected, they will record onto separate channels. If you're only connecting one external microphone and you'd like it to play across both channel 1 and 2, then change the channel 2 input from input 2 to input 1, and this is available in the audio menu on page 1. When one input is carried to both channels, you can choose whether these are separated or linked. When separated is chosen, it means each channel's audio can be separately and individually adjusted. When linked is selected, it means channel 1 and channel 2 will capture identical audio levels. The audio input terminals can also be selected from page 1 on the audio page. On page 3, ensure mic trimming is set to 0 dB and mic attenuation is off. Increasing the mic trim will make the audio louder, but could also increase the audio's noise. Turning on the mic attenuation could also make a person's voice appear tinny. Personally, from page 4, I ensure the input limiter is turned off and mic will be grayed out, as this refers to the 3.5mm jack input. Keep the built-in mic modes as normal and the mic attenuation and low cut off. On page 5, ensure the headphone volume is comfortable for your own hearing, but do remember that if the volume is set to 0, then you won't be able to hear anything. Monitor channels lets you choose how the audio will be distributed across your headphones, and which microphone will be played across each ear. Your monitor channels can also be set for the HDMI output if you're using an external monitor. Tab 5 is all about your monitoring setup. Now, nearly all of the assistance functions can be outputted to both the built-in LCD and through the HDMI to an external monitor, which is really useful for critical exposure and focus. Page 1 lets you adjust the contrast, sharpness, and luminance of the LCD screen, while page 3 lets you turn the LCD or HDMI output to black and white. I'd recommend keeping this off unless you're planning on shooting a black and white film and needed a visual cue for the scene's contrast ratio. Page 4 and 5 let you adjust the camera's OSD, i.e. the screen display information. 3 display levels can be toggled on, and these can be carried through to the HDMI. The opacity and strength can also be stipulated, and the orientation can be adjusted if you need to film vertically for online content creation. As previously discussed, and page 7 lets you add the Rec 709 LUT when shooting in log. Within page 8, you choose the HDMI range, and whether the full dynamic range from the image is outputted to an external monitor when shooting in log or HDR. Personally, I choose full range. Tab 6 gives us our assistance functions. Now, many of these parameters can be enabled via the Live Pages Quick Function tab, but this window is where we can adjust and refine them. Page 1 is where we can enable a second focus guide frame, which allows you to choose and switch between 2 dedicated focus points. Page 2 lets you customize your peaking levels, and page 3 lets you turn the image black and white when the magnification button is pressed. This is useful as it's easier to gain critical focus when viewing a black and white image as there's more contrast. Page 4 gives you the false color index, which shows you the scale of which colors represent which light levels, and you can also enable the false color output to an external monitor via the HDMI. This is really useful because the built-in false color chart is directly optimized for the camera's picture profiles, which isn't the case with external monitor exposure aids. As previously shown, page 5 lets you fine-tune your zebra percentage range, and page 6 lets you select the type of waveform you wish to use. Pages 7 and 10 let you enable and customize markers. Within page 8, you can enable a variety of visible markers such as a center marker type, horizontal marker, vertical marker, and a grid marker. These can be useful for composing compositions and adhering to leading lines within a scene. Across page 9, you can enable aspect markers such as 2.39 and 1.85 for ensuring your composition is correct across your post-production workflow. Page 10 provides you with safety markers for the action and subtitles safe zone, and page 11 allows you to create your own custom markers. The safe area percentage for an action safe zone is 92.5% and 90% for the subtitle safe zone. These used to be 90% for the action safe zone and 80% for the title safe zone, but this changed during the transition to HD widescreen TVs. Tab 7 relates to network settings, in which the C70 can be remotely controlled by Canon's web browser app. However, a third-party adapter is needed, for which we currently don't have. Tab 8 provides our Assignable buttons. This allows you to alter which functions are accessible via the external Assignable buttons. Pages 1 and 2 have all 13 Assignable buttons already selected with chosen parameters, while page 3 provides Assignable buttons for an external remote, of which we currently don't have. I normally leave most of these at their default, however I'd recommend altering button 7 and switching it to tracking. Our system setup lies across tab 9, and while there's 10 pages and a lot that you can change from within here, the most pressing are the following. Page 1 lets you reset the camera to its default parameters, set your camera's date, time and language, and lets you save and load menu and picture profile settings to and from an SD card. This means you can quickly and automatically reinstall all of your custom settings into the camera rather than manually doing so. Page 2 lets you set the HDMI resolution parameters, and page 3 gives you your timecode adjustability. Now currently we don't run Genlock or use any wireless timecode systems, so syncing will mainly be done via a clapperboard. However, in the future we will be utilizing timecode, and this would be the location to tune some of those parameters. Page 4 provides customization of the camera's control dials, and I normally keep the front dial as iris and the rear dial as ISO and gain, or off if I'm worried about accidentally turning it on and changing a setting. On page 6, I ensure the record button is enabled and on-screen record standby button is on, and this just places an on-screen box around the record icon, and I set the touchscreen response to normal. The tally lamp can be enabled on page 7, which is useful so the talent and operator know when recording has begun. However, if this does become distracting or reflects on objects within the scene, then turn this off. Page 8 lets you adjust the fan speed, and I normally set this mode as automatic, speed in standby as middle, and speed during recording as low. This should ensure that microphones close to the camera don't become distorted. Tab 10 is an area where you can customize and import your most important and frequently used settings. There are 5 pages, and each page has 6 slots that you can customize. I normally place the following across each page. Hope this helps. Thanks for watching. Keep shooting, keep being creative, and we'll see you soon.